Excellent. So, hi everyone. This is the final part of our series on sort of customer success from the Information Lab. We're going to finish off with a chat on agility with data. I'm joined, of course, by my colleague Emma White.
Hi everyone. Hope everyone's keeping well.
Excellent. So, if we go to our next page, final reminder, as we have with all of these sessions, to remind you to join our meetup group. We're running a bunch of sessions. You'll notice a couple more on the way in the next few weeks as we sort of continue in our lockdown period. But of course, do check out our past events as well, which are now on YouTube. So do check out our YouTube, because there will be other, our content will be always uploaded to there as well.
Yeah, so as we've mentioned, this is the last one in a series of webinars that we've been doing. These will all slowly kind of drip feed onto our YouTube channel. So if you've missed any, then you can always go over there and watch them, watch the ones you've missed, or watch the ones again that you'd like to. And obviously, feel free to share those with anyone that you might find them interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular session is all about agility with data. Now, what does that really mean?
Yeah, so we've split this into almost 3 distinct sections here, and we were talking about some front-end agility as well as back-end agility. So with this sort of front-end, when you're actually working with data, you always want to lead with insight, right? So this is making sure that you're able to work with the different levels of insight you're trying to go for, have a good understanding of the questions you're asking, but also make sure that you're able to have the tools to complete the task of finding some good insights in the future. The second sort of rung here that I've added is discovery. So making sure that it's easy and you can be quite agile in discovering new content, new data, new sort of abilities. And the final one is being agile in your analysis and making sure that sort of step to insight, that time to insight, is reduced to a point which is as low as possible, or at least to a point where you can do some iterative BI as this sort of different concept where you can sort of iterate and grow and sort of develop your insight as you get additional context in the world of data.
Yeah, so I guess one part, of agility with data is just being able to connect to it. So business users know where and how to access the data they need when they need it. This is incredibly important if you're looking to do more of a self-service model. So if you've got people who don't have data analyst in their job title doing, creating their own insight. So, users know where they go to for their data. They know how to access it, how to log in and get to it. But also that it's, maybe searchable as well. So if they've not used a particular data set before, they know where to go and search for data that they might need for a particular project. And there's lots of different tools in Tableau and Alteryx that help you do that as well. So if we think, the most obvious one with Tableau is using Tableau Server as a repository for your data sources. So you can publish data sources and data source connections to Tableau Server for your desktop users to connect to, or for your web edit explorers to use to create their own analysis on the server as well.
For sure.
Have you got any others there, Ravi, that you'd want to add?
No, I think that discovery process is really important, right? Making sure that people are able to discover the new insights and sort of explore as well. So, recommendations, and this is where sort of back-end natural language and machine learning does come into play, where, you've got the machine helping you to find stuff that you are interested in, elevating content that's relevant to you, as well as data that's relevant to you.
Yeah, and you can see that starting to happen in Tableau now as well. So if you're a desktop user, when you connect to a certain database, it will suggest other tables for you to join in, or other tables that other users have used while using that particular one that you're connected to. Yeah. So that is a great way of surfacing, being able to find other data sets you might find useful. Obviously we've got Tableau Catalog as well now. Now that is part of a data management add-on for Tableau Server, but that is allowing people to catalog what data is on their Tableau server, so things that are published, but also things that are published but embedded in workbooks as well.
Yeah,
So it's just creating that repository of things that are searchable for you to find.
exactly.
And the last one on there, if you're using Alteryx, then with Alteryx server, you can actually kind of have saved data connections on Alteryx server. So any of your users that are using desktop and connected to Alteryx server can then, see all of your database connections on there. They're all kind of searchable. You might want to embed credentials or ask people to put their own credentials in. But, in these tools, there are ways of surfacing those connections that people might need, but not know how to create themselves. So let's move on to our next one.
Mm-hmm. So this is mainly talking about, data can be easily combined from different places to provide insight. So being able to understand where your data is coming from and sort of having a repository and a platform where it sits in can help you reduce that time to insight. So this could be through curated data sources that are clean and sort of having that documentation that people can understand what's going on, but also having that platform where people can, either understand how to access data or understand the information they're going to get from what they're working with. So the tools we have in this case with our favorite two tools, Alteryx and Tableau. Well, Alteryx allows you, as Emma mentioned, to have those saved data connections, but also you can create custom macros and apps which have embedded credentials. These can be encrypted, so you're able to sort of share those out and share that sort of insight and connection without actually having to reduce your data security. The second sort of element there, of course, is on Tableau server, where you're then able to share curated data sources, but I think also do some background monitoring on, hey, let's have a look at what people are actually using already, right? So let's see if people are using our Oracle tables. Well, why are they using those tables when we've recently moved to SQL Server? And you can do that sort of monitoring and access tracking, as well as being able to then use that information to then move forward into giving people, reducing the sort of steps needed to access the right data at the right time.
Yeah, and with this point, combining data from different places as well, like with Alteryx desktop, you've got so many different data connections, the same in Tableau desktop as well. So, connecting to these curated data sets that are published is all well and good, but there's always going to be people that, have that Excel file somewhere, or, some sort of CSV somewhere that they also need to load in. So, both of these tools let users join in this extra data that might not be surfaced in a published source somewhere or in a database somewhere. So allowing your users to connect to those files when needed to deliver some more insight is a great feature of these tools as well.
Sure.
Right, let's move on to the next point. So users can create their own insight and analysis regardless of their job title. Now, this really comes down to where you're an organization that's using self-service analytics. So you're allowing anyone that doesn't have data analyst in their job title to also create their own insight, also do their own reporting and find their own answers to their own questions. And that is a really big part of being agile with data as well, is it's not going back to that report factory, so going back to IT or back to your data analyst every month when you need that new report, but you've got the abilities, the tools, the training, the knowledge to be able to go and create your own insight yourself. Yeah, so I'm just thinking about the ways that Tableau and Alteryx can do that. So with Tableau desktop, you can go and create your connect to your own data sources, create your own insight. But I think most importantly for this sort of one is it's looking at that web edit, that explorer that can go and edit some existing reports to make them a little bit more nuanced for them, or go and connect to those published data sources and start asking their own questions of them.
Exactly. I think this is also very dependent on the structure you have in your background, right? So whether you're going for a centralized function or a sort of distributed function where you're using champions and sort of having seeded folks within each organization or business unit who are taking on the mantle to be that data person. It really depends on what you're going for there in terms of how easy is this, and this the sort of mechanism that this is then distributed wide, right? So I think you're absolutely right there, Emma. Like being able to sort of take that step away where everyone stops like requesting BI and requesting insight, and then starts doing self-service. That's the sort of journey you want to go on. And again, all of these things link back into making sure that you're reducing the roadblocks and adding that level of both understanding, both transparency, understanding where the questions people are going to be asking, and then making it as easy as possible for them to get those insights, not just through availability and sort of the discovery process, but also the way that they can actually pick up tools and start working themselves, and make sure that their learning curve and onboarding process is both as smooth and as clear as it can be.
Yeah, and I mean, to get to this point, we've done so many webinars this series on, on all of the things that you need to kind of get to this point where anyone can start creating their own insight. And there's so many things, that's part of that. So, having that data management, having that education and training of all users, so they're all, have some form of data literacy and understand the data in your organization and how it's stored and what the field names mean and things like that. It all kind of boils down to this being able to be agile with your data and your insight and your analysis.
Exactly.
So let's move on to another point. I'll let you take this one, Ravi.
Yeah, so this is sort of our final point in this sort of section about agility, and before we open up to sort of discussions and sort of thoughts and questions. So this is sort of a really nice visual that Tableau have created about insights in general, and sort of the visual insights flow, the cycle of visual analysis, if you will. And I think this, while it's very much focused on the process of visual analysis, I think it really applies to data and the sort of the process that we've sort of taken you on in this 7 or 8 part series. We're talking about all these different things that you have to do to sort of get to that point. And it might seem quite overwhelming, but it's never really a journey from point A to point B. I'd always consider this as it's a constantly changing, developing journey where there are always going to be different sort of roadblocks and issues, and some parts will be easier, some parts will be more difficult. And this is why agility is really an iterative process alongside everything that we've talked about in the last 2 or 3 weeks, because really making sure that you're being quite nimble and agile and learning quite fast about what are the questions we need to answer, what data do we have, what do we don't have. And through this process, what you also find is you discover the sort of issues and flaws that you have within your organization and within the data flow. So what a good level of agility does is allows you to reassess, reevaluate, and adapt as a constant process, as part of that sort of understanding of the user base as well as the direction you're taking your organization. I think that's really important. Having that, the sort of new age of business intelligence is very much focused on iterative business intelligence, and the fact that we do have that ability now through the communication channels and technology to be quick and nimble and react fast and fail fast and continue to move forward. I think the sort of objective of this slide, and I think this session, is very much around that idea.
Yeah, and that is something that is quite a hard thing to change in some organizations as well, is that kind of mindset of, I have to completely scope out my project first. I have to get all of my data in the right place, completely correct, before I can even start my analysis. And then my analysis has to be completely perfect before I give it to the end user. And we see so many organizations still in that kind of mindset, and it is really hard one to shift out of, to do more of this iteration, to maybe sit down with an end user with some data and just put something together in 30 minutes and then take it away and polish it and come back and reiterate and keep doing that process over and over again. It is a hard thing to shift into, because it does have to change working patterns. But you'll find that being agile gives you faster insight and being able to make those fast business decisions in a changing environment, much like we're in at the moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, it is a hard thing to do, but I do think it does allow businesses to be agile and fast moving, which is really important.
I think all of the things we've discussed in the last 2 or 3 weeks really culminate on making sure that there are process and pipelines and ideas where everyone's buying in, right? It doesn't have to be absolutely everyone. It has to be the key people in key roles, both from the top down and bottom up. I think we talked about this when we were talking about these sort of education platform side of things, where we're trying to understand how do we move and grow data and data literacy as well as viz literacy. Well, a lot of that comes through buy-in and giving people time and the making it a priority, right? And again, all of these things feed into this constant cycle. It's never something that's done like a piece of art, right? But you're always getting wins and you always have targets on the way, and making sure you have that process set in place allows you to be agile, allows you to have those self-service wins and sort of move towards those tricky terrains of digital transformation.
Yeah, great points. So I think we've kind of got through most of the content that we wanted to discuss today. So we're going to open it now to some Q&A. So we've got the chat open. We can both see the chat, and you could also raise your hand if you want to unmute yourself to ask a question. More than happy to have people speak on the call as well. So we'll let the questions come in. It could be about agility that we've been discussing today, or anything in the last series that you'd like to ask.
Exactly. I think today we're sort of leaving a lot more time for people to come back and ask questions and sort of comment and share their thoughts. Cool. So we've got one first question from Alex, who's been on this journey with us for the last few weeks. Thank you for that, Alex. Is data agility and self-service predicated on an accessible, complete data catalog to understand meaning and context? That's a really good question. Do you want to start off with that, Emma?
Sure. So I think that the question, as I understand it, is, do you have to have that complete data catalog to support the understanding and the meaning of the data to make this self-service viable? The answer is kind of yes and no for me. I think if you've got users who, or just people in the business who, understand their role and maybe work with the data a little bit in their day-to-day, if they work with a CRM system in marketing and you give them that CRM data, they could probably understand it and work their way around it, a little bit. So I don't think you have to have this complete catalog with everything described straight away. I think that is an important piece of work that needs to happen. But I think just making that data accessible to people in the first place, you're going to find those kind of data savvy people, those people who just kind of get it and can start working with it. And then that knowledge might then trickle through into the rest of the team. But more importantly is you're going to get feedback on what that data catalog should contain. So the things where they did get stuck, the things that they didn't know, this meant that, and what maybe, what is my basic row level of data here? What does one row equal in this data set? So again, it's part of that iterative process. So when you're writing your data catalog, you could do it from a very standoffish, I own this data and write it out for your users, but actually you want their feedback on what you're writing and what you're cataloging to kind of make that accessible for your users as well.
Completely, and I think I echo virtually everything you've said there, Emma. I think what I want to add is the sort of process of cataloging and even just sort of setting up a new platform around the data space, in my opinion, should start off with a discovery process of understanding what are the key questions that you're currently answering with the current reporting solutions you have and the business intelligence solutions. And how does that then translate? And then within that process, what you understand is what are the key data sources and what are the key data sources that you need to transfer first. And that you then start prioritizing, well, if these are our 5 sort of gold standard data sources we need to curate and document, that's the ones you start with. I think if you do everything at once, it sort of becomes like, it's like waiting for rain in a desert. It will come around, but you don't know how long you're going to be waiting for. Because all of these things, you can always find out problems, and there's always going to be changing definitions in the space of space of data and the way that people want to report on things. So I agree with Emma in the yes and no, but I think there's an approach here where you use discovery and you use workshops and all these different sort of levers that you can pull in order to make sure that the business critical priority stuff is dealt with first and the stuff that people care about, because that's how you can drive adoption moving forward as well.
Yeah, great. We've got another question here. So this is from Steve. In our discussions at LSE, a key concern of many of the SMEs is that use of their data needs a strong sense of context to avoid misunderstanding and inaccurate conclusions. How might we address this when deploying data sources through Tableau Server? That's a fantastic question. Have you got any ideas there, Ravi?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of ideas. What you can do here is you can start. There's sort of two clear trains of thoughts here. So what you can do first off is consider mass training, right? So where you have to sign something and add a really robust process where you, in order to access this data source, you have to go through this where we explain to you exactly what's going on and how this works and how it's aggregated, and then we sign off and then you can use it, right? And then you add them to a group on Tableau Server that gives them access to that data and they can start building analysis of it. The second option is to sort of add all of the sort of warnings alongside the data source. So using the information bullet, using tags, adding it within calculated fields and fields, comments so you can hover over on Tableau Server if you're using Ask Data, for example, or even in desktop when you're connecting to a Tableau Server data source, you can add a comment. So when you hover over the field, a comment pops up. In calculated fields, you can add in comments using the 2 backslashes. That's more of a passive way. And I think, in my experience, in my opinion, as a user of these data sources, I don't think I would look in those fields. I'd just start playing immediately. So I think if there are data sources and fields that you do want to, I don't want to say police, but make sure people are using correctly, you can set up this sort of process of training people and the sign-off process. And then on top of that, if you really want to get really savvy, you can create some Postgres reports off the Postgres repository that give you alerts based on certain data sources. So say, for example, Emma's gone onto our Tableau Server and connected to some sales data. Well, I want to know when someone's connected to it, so I can sort of reach out and be like, hey, just to let you know, great, I love the fact you're using this, but can you I just want to remind you about these 5 fields that are quite key, and just the sort of responsibility we're bestowing upon you by giving you access to this data. That's my opinion here. So Emma, if you've got any ideas.
No, I totally agree. I think there's a few elements here that are going to come into play. So like you mentioned, like the training of your users to understand this data. I see a lot of organizations running kind of like, obviously you need to understand how to use Tableau and how to connect to data, but and that can be quite generic training. You can use dummy data sets. So the sales data set that you get with Tableau is quite often the one used for training. But then I would always say, like, alongside that, you have to have like Tableau at LSE, for example, and you might tailor that session depending on your users. So if you're training a team from a certain department, you could ask, what data sets are you likely to connect to? Okay, well, as part of your intro to Tableau, let's have a look at these data sets and let's go through them and explain them, and explain what each individual row level means and what are the nuances of these data sets. But you can also put things into practice like your peer reviews. So if analysis is going to be created that a lot of people are going to use, does that go to a production project or a production site? And if it does, what's the sign-off process for that? So does it get peer reviewed? Does someone come and check the numbers? Does someone check the context in there and everything makes sense? So there's certain things that you can put in place for these sorts of data sets that might, on the surface seem easy to use, but have a lot of context or nuance to them.
Exactly. Let me take on this question from Nishant. So can you please share some good resources on getting to know data granularity in place where you can find multiple tables and data sources in place that then to understand how joins are working, any particular ways to get forward? So we're just about to send in a YouTube link to a webinar by a chap named Ben Jones. Ben used to work for Tableau, now runs his own data literacy focused company. Now, what I really like about this webinar in particular is talks about the contours of your data, and there's a checklist of 10 things, exactly, the contours of data, a checklist of 10 things to do to understand what's going on with your data to begin with. Now, in terms of understanding what's going on in your backend, Tableau's solution to this is the data catalog to help you find data lineage. Alteryx, of course, has the Alteryx Connect. But I think on top of that, there are also other tools you can use to sort of start unpicking from that sense. Emma, do you have anything to add there?
So I guess the question is about kind of data literacy, getting users to understand the granularity of data, getting them to understand how joins work together. It is a tricky one. There is a learning process involved. So that video that Ravi linked to is really good for training people about, what are the questions I should be asking when I first connect to a new data set? What things should I go through? With joins, there is obviously a need for training on how to join data properly. So the difference between a left, right, and inner join, and what different ones you could end up excluding a load of data that you didn't mean to exclude and get all the wrong results and things like that. So I think there is definitely a place for education about joins as well. There's also a place for those curated data sets as well. So if you recognize that there are tables of data that are consistently joined together, why not make that a curated published data set on Tableau server or Alteryx server, or put it into a view in a database for people to connect to, rather than doing those joins themselves over and over again where you could have user error. So I think it's a little bit of education and a little bit of hand holding and deciding, can I make this a published data set where the joins are already done? Yeah,
absolutely. Just to follow up on Steve's point. So Steve's mentioned that they're considering bot and alert and teams. I love that stuff. Like, I think with webhooks in Tableau server, this is going to be so powerful to be able to sort of hook into different alerts and understanding sort of what's happening on the server in a passive way without having to go in. So yeah,
that's going to be really useful.
Shall we wrap up there sort of and then just finish off with our final slide?
Yeah, of course.
So just on myself and Emma just wanted to thank you all for joining us on this sort of journey. What we're going to do is start consolidating these on our website as well. But do find any resources on YouTube. You know how to find the Information Lab, and myself and Emma are very Googleable, I guess. So do reach out if you do have any questions or comments, and we'd of course love to hear feedback from you about this series itself as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening and joining us, especially to those that we've seen kind of again and again at the different sessions. That's really cool. Thank you.
Exactly. And have a great rest of lockdown, and hopefully everyone's keeping well.